Maurizio Santoro, welcome. What do you think of this result?
Well, thank you. Well, it has been the most divided and polarized election in Brazil since the return of democracy 35 years ago. And Lula won, but by a very small margin, something like 1.5%. So that means that the election ends today, but not the division of Brazil. And it's going to be a big challenge for him in his third administration, much harder than when he was president for the first time 20 years ago.
And so earlier polls had indicated it was going to be a much stronger showing for Lula. What do you think's happened over the last couple of months?
Well, the polls were mistaken both in the first round and in the second. So I think that there is a moment where Brazilian pollsters have to think a little bit about their methods, about what's going on, because it's clear that the polls are not capturing the mood of the right-wing voters in Brazil. They underestimated the support of Bolsonaro in both rounds of the election. So there's something that's not really working, perhaps because we're talking about a political movement that's organizing itself through WhatsApp groups, through the social media, and not the ordinary political channels, such as newspapers or radios. So perhaps it's harder to understand what's going on right now. But without a doubt, Bolsonaro lost the election, but he is a very powerful and influential politician in Brazil and will be the most important leader of the opposition to Lula.
How did Bolsonaro retain so much support considering the disastrous handling of COVID in Brazil?
Well, I was surprised by how many Brazilian voters didn't pay much attention to the pandemic or didn't care very much about what happened or about the economy, because we're also facing a very difficult economic time in Brazil with high inflation and high unemployment. But what happened is that many voters support Bolsonaro, not because of his performance as an economic manager or by the way that he responded. I'm not sure if you are hearing, but my neighborhood is basically exploding in support of Lula, right? Yeah, but this is just a part of Brazil, right? So Brazil is very divided now. Yeah. And for many people today, Bolsonaro represents their religious values because they are very Catholic or because they are evangelicals, and they fear that Lula and the left wing are not going to respect these traditions. So this country is divided perhaps in a way that it was never so much divided in our history. And this is a big challenge for us to understand what's going on, why this country is so fractured. And of course, that's going to be a major challenge for politicians as well. How they're going to build coalitions, negotiate with Congress, and so on.
Yeah, I want to get back to Bolsonaro a little later, but since Lula is the winner, tell us a bit about Lula and what you expect presidency under him will bring.
Well, the life story of Lula is unbelievable. I mean, he was born in a very poor region of Brazil. He immigrated to São Paulo to work in the car industry, and then he became a president. Then he went to jail, and now he's back to presidency. I mean, if it was a script for a movie or for a television show, people wouldn't believe that a life like that would be possible. And it was a surprising...
Yeah, we can hear all those celebrations behind you, Maurizio, but we can also hear you clearly. So just keep talking.
People are very excited, actually. But it was a surprising coming back because 2 years ago, Lula was in jail and a pandemic was hitting Brazil very hard. And I think that no one believed it, that a day like that would be possible. So it was really amazing for many people here. But it was a very narrow victory for Lula. It was a very small difference, just 1.5%. And the shouts that we are hearing, the happiness of the people here, yes, many people are feeling like that, but there are also half of the country is feeling the other way. So this is the challenge now for Brazil.
Yeah, and so on the policy front, what will a Lula presidency mean for Brazil?
Well, in terms of foreign policy, I think that we are going to see Brazil going back to dialogue with the United States, with the European Union, with Latin America, because we're very tense diplomatic relations with Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro more or less isolated Brazil in the world stage. But the big challenge for Lula will be economic policy, especially because he was able to create a very broad coalition between the left, between the liberals, between moderate centrists, And now, how he's going to create an economic policy that can be good for all of them? I mean, this is really a big challenge now.
And so just go into a bit more detail for us on the economic challenges facing Brazil at the moment, what Bolsonaro's approach had been and how radically different Lula's approach will be.
Well, Bolsonaro basically tried to deal with the economic problems of Brazil, introducing reforms to make the Brazilian state smaller. For example, the reform of the pension system, which was actually quite good and it was important for Brazil. But the problem is that these reforms were not enough, especially when the pandemic hit Brazil very hard. And now we have many people unemployed, many people facing hunger in Brazil, which was a problem that we thought that it was part of the past. Now it came back. And all these people that are in a very vulnerable economic and social situation, they are in a hurry. They want a quick response from the government. But at the same time, Lula is going to need to pay attention to the fiscal problems of Brazil, to curb government spending. That Bolsonaro went into a spending spree, trying to get re-elected. So it's going to be difficult for Lula. This contrast between these huge expectations that the Brazilian people is feeling right now and the day-to-day challenge of the government.
But my final question, because I know you're a busy man, you've got a lot of festivities around you there. Will Bolsonaro accept this result?
Probably not. I mean, Bolsonaro has been saying for a long time that he would not accept the results of the election if he loses. And he has been talking about how Brazilians should not trust the electoral system, how Brazilians should not trust the electoral court. So probably we are going to face in the next couple of months, until Lula's inauguration, the possibility of some kind of violent act from Bolsonaro or his supporters, in a similar way about what happened in the United States with Donald Trump, with the invasion of the American Congress. So we need to pay attention to what's going to happen in the next weeks. And yes, it's a difficult scenario, especially because of this very narrow difference between Lula and Bolsonaro in the second round.
Okay, Maurizio Santoro, great to be able to speak to you on this night in Rio de Janeiro. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. Have a good day.